This was a year that I went above the clouds and really tried to stay there. I prioritized my daydreams and followed an idea that they were all completely possible. It probably explains how I went from having never used oil paints at the start of the year to actually feeling like an artist by the end of it. It could explain why I reached out to my friend, hoping to create more together, to launching an entire collection and brand just a few months later. But I can't quite explain where the feeling first came from, or whether it was something I just decided one day and acted on. I didn't have any of these things as goals at the start of the year, but it's been so nice to see where every intention has led. Hi, I'm Ling and I'm an artist in Sydney. I make everything from my living room, which I've turned into a home art studio. So this year was the year of the snake, which usually brings a lot of transformation. And when I look back on how everything unfolded and all of the decisions I made this year, I feel like they all really led to that. At the very start of the year, I had begun turning this into more of a studio space, but I hadn't actually started painting. And I realized that I was putting it off for quite a long time, simply out of fear of the unknown. I also definitely wouldn't have called myself an artist, and I think I had so many misconceptions about what that actually meant, even though I've always made art in some way. I think I was also feeling a little bit confused by trying to balance what I thought was the right or maybe responsible thing to do with my time, but it was actually starting to cost me ideas and opportunities that I did really want to pursue. But at the same time, I'd written a note in my journal at the very start of the year, which said, I feel like anything is possible, and that definitely set the tone for everything else that came afterwards. I think I really started prioritizing my ideas and acting like they were completely possible. And at some point, everything completely changed overnight because I genuinely feel like I woke up and was an artist. I know that I didn't wake up and become something completely different, and it's more like I woke up a version of myself that had just been laying low. But it really felt like everything transformed very quickly. So I started painting and was able to take on commissions, which I really couldn't have predicted. I also turned some of my works into prints and journals. I really said that I wanted to do more photography, and that led to around 20 different projects. Some of them were even destination shoots, which I really couldn't have predicted, but I'm so grateful for. I also kept drawing, which I've always loved doing since I was really young, and it was so nice to give some drawings to other people and also to draw based on my own memories as well. I also launched a whole brand with my friend Sarah, who's a ceramicist. This ended up being quite a big collection of things like art, fragrances, and handmade pottery, which are all inspired by our heritage. I'd actually never done design like this before, but I feel like I was able to draw on a lot of different things I've created and do things like branding, product photography, and videos behind a lot of our pieces. One of the best things about this was we hired a pavilion inside the Chinese gardens in Sydney, and it was such a nice way to end the year and actually celebrate everything we were able to make together. Around then, I thought it would be a great time to start planning an art gallery as well. So I'm currently working on some pieces with my friend Irene, who's a painter. And I feel like maybe that's been the biggest change that's come out of this year, is meeting so many people in creative spaces and just spending a lot more time talking about ideas. I feel like if you're working on something creative, we can put so much energy into our own thoughts or people's projections onto those thoughts, and neither of them are really helpful 100% of the time. Whereas I feel like the right friends can really transform any idea, either through collaboration or just through support, which has been so meaningful. So today I would love to show you everything that I made in my very first year as an artist. And this is not to compare or to say that you need to take any one of my pieces, but I really just think it's always a good time to stop and reflect. And honestly, this year had a lot to look back on. One of the best things about this year was that we constantly had friends over to paint, to chat for hours, to make crafts together, to eat and celebrate. And I think the biggest transformation came from turning my apartment into a space for all of those things. When we first moved in, I had a dream that it would feel like an art studio, a place to follow inspiration at any point in the day. So Jace and I tried to make it calm and creative in every way that we could. Some of this came from physical changes like hanging up art or putting out books. Others came from rituals to slow down and make everyday things feel intentional and inspiring. In some ways, it seemed like I could only begin painting when I finally set up this easel, but I think the real change actually came from how it shifted my mentality. I really feel like calling this an art studio gave me a tangible place to explore anything, even if I was just using a fold-up table most of the time. It's also still just a corner in our living room, but it turned into an area to share ideas, have photo shoots, and eventually launch a collection and pack orders. I actually really loved setting things up and putting them away to suit whatever we had planned, and it felt like I was making a whole new space every single day. At the start of the year, I decided it was finally time to try oil painting. I had been putting it off for so long, but I eventually bought 5 colors, a few brushes, and a canvas. Getting the supplies was surprisingly easy, and it made me realize that the only other thing that had really stopped me from painting was myself. I had dreamt of making a specific artwork for nearly 2 years, going all the way back to my first sketch, and the start of this year was really all about making it come to life. I've mentioned this painting in other videos, so I won't share the whole process again, but I decided to call it Yuli to represent the energy that we save for creative pursuits. This was the first time that I used my full name stamp and felt like I was making art purely as self-expression.
You should never stop painting.
Around this time, my friend Sarah was planning to visit Sydney. We've always shared art, and she'd been making a lot of ceramic pieces. We realized we were both drawing from similar sources of inspiration, with so many common symbols in Chinese and Korean art. We shared everything from our 2 studios, so when she came over, I asked if she wanted to make a collection together. We began experimenting with fragrances, and I started making illustrations for the packaging. We also both really related to the name of my first painting.
What character is it?
It's Yuli. It's like remaining strength.
Oh, I love that.
Sarah found that Yuri, meaning glass in Korean, worked for the glaze in ceramic pieces too. She ended up making a design from the Korean characters, and my sister turned it into our final logo. It was so nice to bring things together into one brand, and it would be great if you could join us on Instagram at Yuli Kiln. After I finished my first painting and started sharing it, I actually had a bit of a dilemma because so many more people were interested in it than I could have imagined. I had so many friends, especially ones who were also artists, reaching out, and they wanted to own the original. And at first I thought that was great. I think I even shared it in one of my earlier videos about becoming an artist overnight, because it was amazing to me that anyone wanted to own my first painting. But the more I looked at it and the more time I spent with the painting in my own place, the more I felt like I actually really wanted to keep it for myself, and really the goal of painting it was never to monetize it. I talked to my dad about it a lot because he used to do a lot of oil paintings, and the ones that we have hanging up in my childhood home are actually all copies of paintings that he'd sold. And I kind of just didn't want to get to a stage where all of the art I'd made was given away. And so I started looking at alternatives, even if that meant creating new original works for the people who reached out wanting to own it. I also decided to make 2 products to replicate the original artwork. So they're journals and fine art prints. And maybe we should start with the fine art prints because I feel like it's really thanks to everyone who messaged me through YouTube that I was able to get these made. And I'm so happy with how they turned out. So this one is an A2 version of the print. We ended up going for a giclée fine art printing technique, and it's on a very thick cotton rag. It's around 300 GSM, and I believe that it's all made from leftover cotton, which has been repurposed into this print. We also spent a lot of time getting it professionally scanned and testing a lot of different places to do this. So the final thing really looks exactly like the original artwork, and I love that it's picked up all of the details in the paint and also in the linen canvas behind it. I think it's so wild to look back on now because this print has actually been sent to so many different countries around the world. I've sent it out in A4, A3, A2 and A1. And one of them was also printed and stretched onto canvas, which looks even closer to the original painting. I do also have some A0 reserved, which is a really huge size, but because the scan picked up all of the details in the original, it also looks really nice blown up at that scale. So that was the fine art print, and honestly, if you've purchased one, thank you so much for the support. I really couldn't have imagined that I'd be sending those out at the start of this year. These prints are always going to be available. I'm just going to be listing them on the Yuli Kiln website. So the next product that I was able to make with my paintings are these journals. They're made from linen, and so the cover also matches the original artwork. So we went through quite a few different tests for these. This was one of the first ones. And the main thing that I'm proud of with this journal is that they lie completely flat, which is perfect for writing or sketching. I'm planning to use this in the new year to, I guess, map out all of my next paintings and also write morning pages. It's very thick, so it should last quite a while. And on the final version, we also decided to print an inscription on the first page, which goes back to the original meaning of the painting. So it says, "The name Yuli represents the energy that we save for our creative pursuits. We hope this journal can be a space to prioritize your intuition, inner strength, and motivation." And then we've just got the Yuli logo. We also decided to put the logo on the back cover, so it's been debossed into the fabric, and it made the whole thing come together so nicely. I think this whole process has been the most enjoyable thing for me because this one was really about taking the original sentiment behind the artwork, but putting it into something that can actually be used every day. Once I finally started painting, I didn't stop. My first one was in a more simplified, flattened style, but there was one drawing that I kept thinking about and really wanted to turn into a realistic painting next. It's based on my favorite photo of Jason and I by the Lee River. I made a video about how I needed to overcome perfectionism to start this one, mostly because I didn't want to mess it up, and I think I've continued to test that idea. But I've realized that while my passing thoughts can seem like perfectionism, maybe wanting things to be good or wanting to do more, on the other hand, I also feel like they really just come from ambition and aspiration. I don't think I'm making art to get any external validation at all, but more because I'm just really motivated to do things that I enjoy. And that usually comes up in a constant desire to create and to give everything a huge amount of energy. This painting has still definitely been a test of my comfort zone because it's something I've never tried before, and there's definitely a stage in every layer where I don't know how it will turn out. But it is an amazing feeling when everything starts to become clearer, and I'm so excited to have this on the easel for another year while I keep revisiting this memory. I think when it comes down to it, art and photography are really just my ways of appreciating life. We took a trip to Japan around this time. The highlight was definitely seeing Mount Fuji with my mum, especially after days of rain. There are so many things that I still want to share from this trip, but the main one is that presence will always lead to inspiration, even if we can't predict exactly how it will come up. I completely understood why Mount Fuji has been a constant source of inspiration, and I started drawing our view of it in spring. I also drew some photos from Africa the year before, and so many highs and lows came up around then. A brand had actually reached out to license videos from this trip, so I looked back on all of our footage and got to create projects from memories that I really loved. I think the process of filming, editing, drawing, and painting is really all a way of trying to revisit and maybe even preserve my memories. I eventually turned it all into the biggest video that I made this year. It's based on a lifelong journal that my grandpa made when I was born, and if you could watch just one other thing on my channel, I'd suggest starting there. It's a huge reflection on life itself being art, and I feel like that idea is behind everything. Unfortunately, at the same time, we had to store my grandma's paintings. Her memory faded a lot this year, and it's been really hard to process that I can't even ask her about the paintings anymore. I realized that in many ways, I'm just continuing to do things that my grandparents also loved, prioritizing experiences and just being grateful for everything. Around that time, my pawpaw also became unwell, so I pulled out one of the only photos that I have of us together when I was young and decided to draw it for her.
妹妹，我婆婆梳頭啊，畫嘅喎，衰鬼嚇！畫得幾靚啊！
I felt like I'd barely started painting this year, but someone was kind enough to reach out and ask for a custom artwork for their living room. It was a huge 1 meter tall canvas of La Goma, the chili oil. It's really not common for someone to say the words "I love you" in my family home, but food is such an important part of daily life and is really like its own love language, so I couldn't wait to create this piece. We went to China for a month, and I don't think I can sum up the trip here because there was so much to take in. There are a lot of places that I know will have a very lasting impact, and I've already started making things from them. I got a 1.5 meter canvas for one that will be based on Ermeishan, a mountain in the clouds. The Year of the Horse is all about momentum, and I really feel like it's time to just run with these ideas. We also visited Noralang Falls. I feel like the whole landscape had so much abundance, and it really inspired me to come home and start painting right away. I just want to capture how mystical these places seem, so I like building everything up slowly in very thin layers and keeping a light, dreamlike feeling. I didn't want to forget how the low clouds and waterfall looked, and experimented with a new style for them. I also tried a completely new craft and painted paper fans. I think there are so many things telling us that we need to focus on just one craft, become an expert, niche down, and make a profit from it, which I just don't agree with at all. I've never seen anyone's interests or creativity as something that needs a label or justification, and I've never personally questioned how it all fits together. This year, I think I was able to combine so many different things at once in ways that were really fulfilling, and I found so many threads running through each one of them that always had the same source of motivation, which is really just to create based on memories and experiences. I met one of my wedding photography clients through Instagram and always remember they shared the most beautiful photo of cranes in Hokkaido. We became friends and she was the first person to reach out when I started photographing more events. So just before her celebration, I decided to draw her photo of cranes, but this time to put them on a cloudy sky above the sea. This whole month has actually been a bit of a whirlwind when it comes to photography, and I had to completely stop a bunch of other different things just to fit it all in. So I started photography in travel and landscape a few years ago, but this year I really wanted to try more elopement and wedding photography as well. And I would say at the start of the year the plan really was just to try it, but I ended up really enjoying it and so many opportunities came from it that I'm so grateful for. So I just had my last shoot for the year and in total we captured around 20 different events. I also worked on maybe 6 or 7 art or travel campaigns for brands as well. And these definitely weren't spread evenly across the year. So some months I had no photography projects at all, and other months like this one were just back to back. So this month alone, I had more than 30,000 unedited photos to sort through and provide to a whole range of clients. And I think that's just kind of wild to me to process now, because I thought Jason and I took a lot of photos. Like, we really like to take photos and capture all of our experiences. But even though we take a lot and edit a lot, I'd say that I probably only print out around 200 or 300 photos in any of our albums in any given year. But some of these galleries had thousands of photos alone. And I think maybe that was just on a completely different scale that I'm not entirely used to yet. But having said that, I was able to manage my own time and really follow my own energy levels because it was my own work, and I've really enjoyed the process behind it. I'm also a very sentimental person, so having the chance to use my creativity just to capture other people's memories has been so rewarding. So I won't show you every single photo that I took this year because a lot of them are really personal, but there was a whole different mix. I got to capture a family playing mahjong with their grandparents, which I really loved. Others were destination shoots, some were for friends, and we had both small and large events. And I think I just feel really content that I've been able to do something so creative and long-lasting. As soon as all of our photo shoots were over, I changed the art studio again to make way for our homewares collection. There ended up being quite a lot to make for this, like a whole website and all of the product photography. We decided to have a launch event when Sarah came back as well, and brought everything we made to a water pavilion inside the Chinese Garden of Friendship. I'm going to have a separate video about everything we did for this event, but for now I would love to show you the collection. Sarah handmade ceramic pieces like moon vases, mugs, teacups, incense holders, matcha bowls and plates. We sourced bamboo matcha whisks and linen drawstring bags to go with them. We also have art prints and our journal, as well as a whole collection of fragrances. All of these are on our website now, which I'll link below, but if you see something you like and your location isn't showing up, please feel free to message us on Instagram at yulikiln because we might be able to ship it to you. I can finally show you how the fragrances turned out. I feel like I've spent so long talking about them in all of the process videos behind the collection, But on the other hand, I also feel like it's been no time at all when I actually look at how many things we were able to make this year. So we ended up with candles, reed diffusers, and incense sticks, and 6 different fragrances. We might just start with the candles because that's what we originally set out to make. So this is the final design of the candle vessel, and I absolutely love how it came out. This fragrance is called Moonrise, and it's a mix of fig and oolong tea. The main inspiration behind it was how all of my family and friends will always bring plates of chopped fruit when you see them. So we wanted it to be really cozy and a mix of a very sweet fruity smell with a kind of milky tea. We also made 5 fragrances for reed diffusers, and we really wanted these to be refillable, so we had the vessels made out of porcelain. The most popular one by far has been Char, and it kind of makes sense because it's the most classic and long-lasting fragrance. It's based on jasmine tea, which has been made for centuries, ever since the Song dynasty. And I think it's just a really fresh blend of jasmine that's not too sweet. It is floral, but it's very crisp, and we've mixed it with a very earthy black tea. The next one is Moonrise. It's the most cozy and sweet fragrance that we have, and I think it works perfectly in the reed diffusers as well. The third one, which I'm really obsessed with, is based on Jeju Island in Korea. And we wanted to take 2 elements from visiting the island and see if we could replicate them in a fragrance. So the first one is the halabong, which is native to the island. It's like a citrus fruit, kind of similar to a mandarin or tangerine, but it's really sweet. And I also wanted to see if I could bottle the feeling of sitting in a waterfall that runs into the sea. So we have things like sea mist in this, and it's a very fresh citrus scent as well. And I think the biggest praise that I got for this was I showed my friends Annie and Dan one of the candles that had the Jeju oil in it, and I didn't tell them the inspiration behind it, but Dan said that it actually reminded him of being in a seaside cafe. When I asked him where it was, he said it was a cafe on Jeju Island. So the fact that we've actually been able to create this is wild to me. Jeju was also the one that I had the strongest concept for because I just had such clear imagery from the island and our experiences there. But finding the right citrus took such a long time. We went through probably the most amount of testing for this fragrance, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. The next one was also inspired by Korea, and it's based on the Hanok village in Seoul. So we really wanted to mirror the beautiful wooden buildings there and brought in things like teak and plum, but magnolias also bloom there in spring. So this one is a really nice floral scent. We also have one more floral fragrance, which is called Hanami. It's based on the art of flower viewing, and it's really just meant to represent the feeling of going out to see flowers every spring, and it's a combination of cherry blossom and green tea. To go with the crane holders, we also have 3 incense fragrances. All of these boxes have 20 sticks, and each one has been hand dipped in Guangdong, which is another one of my favorite places. But we decided to make these a little bit shorter than some incense you can find, just because I feel like the scent is so strong and it can be overpowering to burn for too long. But we also thought that having a 15-minute burn time would be a really nice and small ritual. I feel like the more I've mentioned making art this year, the more people seem to want to talk about money. And I feel like in the context of creativity, if I'm meeting people through a project or a collaboration, normally we'll focus on talking about things like inspiration and motivation. But to be honest, anything outside of that context usually starts with people asking me whether I do something full-time or whether I will do it full-time. And my gut reaction a lot of the time is to wonder why anyone other than the tax office needs to know that, because it just seems so irrelevant to why I'm making art in the first place. And I think there are a few misconceptions behind the question, because If you look at anything creative and wonder whether it can be full-time, I don't think it has too much to do with time at all. It's very rare for one of these projects to neatly fit into a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday office structure. Something like wedding photography, for example, just doesn't fit neatly into that at all. And so I think the question really is coming from a place of wanting to know less about time and more about whether the money you make from that project can solely fund your life. I really just feel like your creativity doesn't have to answer that question, and it doesn't have to be the reason why you're doing something. When it comes to art, that was one thing that wasn't an existing business, which I guess photography kind of turned into. And I really just wanted to try painting this year, so just want to put that as a huge disclaimer for this whole conversation, because I think the fact that I sold prints and commissions was definitely a bonus that I couldn't have predicted, but it was definitely not the original motivation behind painting. While I was traveling in Japan and China this year, I was able to blend all of those things together. I found so much inspiration and was able to make new art. I had photography projects while I was there, and I also got to collaborate with some other brands on content creation and writing blogs. So when I look at the year as a whole, there were so many different projects in many different creative areas, but not one of them was my single focus or the thing that I solely depended on. And I've honestly never really seen doing any of them full-time as the goal. To me, that sounds really restrictive, actually, to only have one thing take up all of your time and energy and be the thing that you also financially depend on. And I think I'm a lot more rewarded by the idea that I've been able to fit as many things as I want to try into 1 year. But having said all of that, I was also stretched very thin by the end of the year, trying to balance my regular office job, which does take up quite a lot of the week, with all of these other projects that really took off in ways that I couldn't have predicted. So this was probably a very, very long-winded way of saying that art and photography were not my full-time income or full-time focus this year, but potentially they may need to be if I want to give everything that I can to them. It's my birthday today, and my sister Ealing stayed over last night, so we're probably just going to paint, and Jace has already made the most amazing breakfast. But recently I've tried to use my birthday for a lot of reflection. This is a journal that my grandpa actually made when I was born, and it's called a lifelong journal. It has space for every single month for 100 years. And I haven't been very good at filling it in over my whole life, but recently I've tried to make it something that I do every birthday, especially because my birthday is on the last day of the year, so it's such a good time to sit and properly reflect on everything. And I'll probably save that for tonight. But the other thing I really want to do this year is use one of my own journals. We carried these samples around China for nearly a whole month, and I didn't write in them because I wanted to keep them perfect for all of our product photography as we launched our brand. But I actually love them. Like, half the reason I made them was because I wanted a journal like this with my own painting on it. So I think today I'm actually going to use one for the first time. I started this year with so many ideas, but no real sense about where they could lead. On this day last year, Jace helped me to set up our studio, and I got everything ready to paint. It's kind of wild to see how much I've actually been able to create after deciding that that would be my main priority. It's also strange to look back on the doubts I had then, especially around what it would mean to be an artist. I don't have any second thoughts about living creatively, and I think the biggest realization has been that anything is possible. At the same time, I feel so deeply that it's only made possible because I have so much support, and I couldn't be more grateful for that. Friends have shown up whenever I wanted to try something new, and every single idea can be traced back to home in some way. And even if someone is gone, I feel like they left me with a lifetime of encouragement. This was also the first year that I shared any videos here, and that showed me a lot about creativity. I started making them before I'd even really started making the art, and it's interesting to know that sharing the process or motivation behind something can sometimes be more important than sharing a finished piece. I've loved every single conversation that's come from this, and seeing other people's art studios, embroidery, soft pastels, photography, fashion, and graphic design. When anyone's reached out about my videos, we're usually making completely different things, but it's so nice to know that we can always connect over why we make them. So if you've watched this or any one of my videos this year, thank you so much for spending time here. It would be great if you could subscribe to this channel, but in the meantime, the Year of the Horse is coming up, so just pause this anytime and I'll hopefully leave you with a new intention.